Welcome to the Unstoppable CEO podcast. I'm your host, Steve Gordon, and today we're continuing our series on the less I do, the more I make. Today we're going to be talking about personal productivity multipliers. Hey friends, it's Steve. Want to know how a $5 book lands a $5,000 client? I've recorded a 15-minute video showing you our magnetic author method. It's up now at magneticauthor.co/video. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a different twist here on the podcast today. Today, we're going to talk about personal productivity multipliers. And if you haven't tuned into this series yet, if this is the first of these that you've discovered, you may want to go back. We've got 5 prior episodes around this idea of the less I do, the more I make. And a little shout out to Larry Weinstein. He actually reminded me of where I first heard this phrase, the less I do, the more I make. It was from a guy named Ron LeGrand, who is from my hometown, Jacksonville, Florida. And Ron used to say that in speeches all the time. And I guess it was burned in my brain. But Ron, if you're out there and listening, thank you. I appreciate you planting that idea in my head. And today I want to talk about not how I'm applying this idea in the business, but actually how I'm revamping my own kind of personal productivity to be able to get more done and more important work done mostly. I mean, that's the key. And so, I'm working towards 4-day work weeks every week, beginning in really less than 2 months from today when I record this. And so to be able to do that, I've got to make better use of time. I've got to be using my time on higher leveraged activities. And that really means being focused on doing the right things. And so there are a few things that I'm doing differently over the last month or so that have made a big impact just in the way that I'm getting my own stuff done and staying organized. So I thought I'd share those today. The first is applying a tool that I actually learned through Strategic Coach and through Dan Sullivan called the ABC model. He's got a great short little 1-hour read book on it. If you go to their website, and I think it's on Amazon as well, called the ABC model. And I really recommend you get the book. And I'll kind of describe the process, but basically you take a sheet of paper, you make 3 columns, label them A, B, and C at the top. And in the first column, column A, that you go and write down everything that you've done over, let's say, the last week that is just irritating. All the stuff you just don't like doing. And I love the word irritating because it's the emotion in that, I think, that makes you actually figure out what those things are and get the right things down. And then in the middle column, the B column, you're going to put all the stuff that's okay. It's like, yeah, okay. It doesn't irritate you, but you're not really excited to do it either. And then in the C column, that third column, the one all the way on the right, you're going to put the things that really excite you. So what did you do over the last week that excites you? And you know what's coming next. You're going to get rid of or delegate all of the stuff in that A column and stop doing it. It's probably not that important anyway. The stuff in the B column, now here you got to discern a little bit. Is this something I can delegate? And the more of that you can get off your plate, the better. And then the C column is the stuff that you want to protect and expand and do more of. And the way that I have been using this is I get rid of that stuff in the A column. I've been doing it weekly. So my goal then, as I do this and I reflect, is that next week, that stuff in the A column is gone. I don't do it anymore. The stuff in the B column, what I find is that after a couple of weeks of it showing up in the B column, it begins to migrate to the A column. It starts to annoy me. And so I start to realize this is not a good use of my time. And that's the part that gets irritating. And so I find that it's naturally pushing things to move off the plate. And to be quite honest, a lot of stuff just goes away. It doesn't get delegated. It just disappears. And I'll tell you, the number one thing that has just disappears, I used to check LinkedIn, and I just don't really check LinkedIn anymore. So if you're trying to reach me on LinkedIn, please send me an email. It'll be much more effective. But I found it just irritated me because there'd be, 50 pitches from people I didn't really want to hear from who weren't interested in a relationship with me to every 1 or 2 valuable messages that I was getting. And so I'm just eliminating that. So I do that every week. I don't spend a lot of time on it. It really takes maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And at least gives me a sense of what do I need to adjust and what's important and what do I need to focus on and expand, most importantly. And that's the other way to push those A items out is you just look at the C column and say, all right, well, let's give that stuff more time. And then there really isn't much time for the irritating stuff at the end of the day. So that's been really, really helpful. And then I've revamped how I'm organizing what I have to do and kind of my own productivity system. I am a self-confessed planner addict, and looked around in my office, and I probably have half a dozen planners. Not all from this year. Some of them are older, but but different ones at different times that I've tried, and I keep going back to note cards. And so for the probably 2-3 weeks, I just tried to operate off of note cards again. I used to do that quite a bit. What I found was, though, I had too much to do, and I found I was rewriting lists a lot. And so I actually went back to one of the online tools that I've had for years and never really fully utilized, called Things 3. Great little to-do list app. And I've figured out how to really best use that for me. And it's actually working really well. I'm getting way more done. Nothing's really falling through the cracks. And that was a challenge for a period of time when too much was flying around and I didn't have a great system to capture it all. So I've been kind of keeping track of everything that has to get done there and then migrating it into the calendar. So basically down to 3 tools: the calendar, Things 3, and a legal pad. And, I'm a bit of a tech junkie. I've got an iPad Pro, I've got an Apple Pencil, I've got, I think, 3 or 4 different note-taking apps, and I've tried to make all of them work and never really been able to make them all work. And I realized what it was is there's just too much friction in that whole process. It's too hard to open the thing up and find the app and then open it and then find where you want to take a note. I just want to be able to flip a page on the legal pad and start taking notes. And then at the end of that, decide, do I need to keep this or not? And if the answer is yes, I need to keep it, then I've got my phone here and I'll take a picture of it, and that goes right into Evernote. In fact, I've got a shortcut created to do just that on my iPhone. So it's like a one click and done, and gets filed. And then if I ever need to go back to it, I've got it. I don't have to worry about losing it. And it's date, time stamped. I don't have to search through 10 legal pads. Because back in the day, back in the old days of the 90s, when I'd work off of legal pads all the time, I might have 4, 5, or 6 legal pads on my desk at any one time. And that wasn't particularly effective back then either. So now it all goes into Evernote. Evernote scans it and makes all the text that I write searchable. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. And that way I can find stuff if I need to. Most of the time I don't need to, but at least it's there and I don't have to worry about it. So I've got a process now for taking down information, and it's friction free. I've got a process for capturing action items, and it's, if not friction free, it's pretty frictionless. And that has really transformed things. Now, those might not be the right tools for you, but what I want you to take away from this is that it's worth thinking about how you're doing that and getting down to the fewest number of tools possible. So 1 tool for time, calendar, 1 tool for actions. For me, that's Things 3 for action items, and 1 tool for notes. And that's the legal pad, which goes into Evernote. So the legal pad's for capturing it, and Evernote is for storing it. I got to give a big shout out to my longtime client, Mark Roman. If you're watching on YouTube, Mark sent me this really amazing Visconti fountain pen, and I'm just having a great time taking notes with that. So thanks, Mark. All right. So the other kind of insight that I had here in organizing, particularly in organizing action items, is that I was trying to organize everything before by project and getting it all filed in the right place. And I finally came to the realization that that was overhead that was unnecessary. When I look at a to-do on a list, I know what it's related to. And if I've written the thing clearly, I know exactly what it relates to. So I don't need that layer of organization. It's self-evident. What I really need, though, is I need everything to show up on the right time horizon. And so I've taken Things 3, which is designed to, be organized by project, and I've kind of reorganized it based around time. So I've taken their project feature and I've created a project for for next actions, which is anything I'm doing today or this week. And so that's one time horizon. And then they've got a great little feature. You click a star in there and it puts things on a separate list just for today. So I know exactly what I'm working on today. I don't have to look at anything else. I know exactly what I've decided I'm going to work on this week, and I don't have to look at the rest of the system all week. And then I've got another project in there that I've titled Next Week. And that holds everything that I've decided I'm not going to do this week, but I need to do soon. And so it's in there kind of in a holding tank for next week. So when I get around to Friday and I review that list, I know here's what's coming up next week, and I can decide, okay, am I going to do it this week? I move it into the this week project, and then I assign it to days. And then I've got a project for this month. So stuff that's not next week, it's further out than that's got to be done this month, goes in there. And then this quarter is the next project. And so anything that's beyond this month goes in a folder or a project for this quarter. And then I've got one for the upcoming quarter. So I'm recording this in Q2. So I've got one for Q3 and Q4. And then finally, I've got one for someday, which means, yeah, this is an idea, but I'm not committed to working on it at all. And by changing how I've organized stuff from organizing by project, or I used to at one point organize everything by client, and by organizing it now by the time horizon that I need to worry about it, it has completely simplified decision-making on all of these action items. So I'm finding I can actually do a much more effective job of capturing things and quickly putting them somewhere. I very rarely am capturing something that I'm actually going to commit to doing this week, unless it's really urgent. And what I've discovered is there's really not that much stuff that falls into that bucket. So almost everything that's captured and new goes into next week, or further out if I know that it's further out. And so it's just really made me much more effective today and much more effective this week at moving the ball forward on the strategic stuff, knowing that anything that's incoming has been placed into a time horizon where I know I'll see it when I need to. And I don't have to fool with dates. I don't have to think about, okay, how many weeks out do I want to schedule this? It's either this week, next week, this month, this quarter, or it's a future quarter, or it's a great idea for someday. So instead of having to pick out of 365 days over the next year when this thing could fall, there are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 maybe possible buckets. And so I'm not saying that's the system you need to adopt, but what I am saying is most people can benefit from examining whatever system you're using to organize yourself and think about, how can I reduce the number of tools, and how can I reduce the friction with each of those tools, and how can I make it so that things are there and waiting for me in the place that I plan to look when I need to see it. And this adjustment to the system has really helped me in that way. So again, I hope this has been helpful for you. I would love your feedback. If you've got some bright ideas that'll improve on my system, please send them in. I'm always looking for new good ideas. So we'll be back next week with a new episode. And next week, we're going to take a pause on this series. And I've had some questions about the best kind of book to write. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of books that you can write and which one is actually the best one to write if you want to generate clients and leads. So stay tuned for that next week.
Thanks for listening to the Unstoppable CEO podcast. Help others discover this show. Leave a review and rating on iTunes at unstoppableceo.net/iTunes.